Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your weekly Hurricane and Hurricane Pro HD video blog. This time of year, doing things just on a weekly basis as the hurricane season is winding down from never really getting started, right? In fact, here is the climatological look at what we would expect during this 10-day time period that we're just beginning today, November 11th through the 20th. 4 points of origin developments in the Pacific, and probably about 3 times that amount overall in the Atlantic, with the largest concentration right here in the Southwest Caribbean Sea. Gulf of Mexico completely shut down at this time of the year based on past trends over the last 100 years or so, and nothing off the southeast coast has ever developed. So it's generally down here in the Southwest Caribbean. And most of the tracks of anything that does develop this time of year would be something like this, where they get swept out pretty quickly to the northeast, and in some cases even east-northeast, as very broad troughs in the upper atmosphere sweep through the lower 48 and come down into the tropics and kind of clean things out. So nothing to worry about, even climatologically speaking, much less in reality, which is what I'll show you in a moment. Interesting to look at the sea surface temperature anomalies, those departures from normal. Right now, most of the deep tropics here are still running above the long-term average. Gulf of Mexico cooling off a little bit, but then the subtropical Atlantic up here still has sea surface temperature departures from the average running in some cases more than 1 degree Celsius, and even more so along portions of the Gulf Stream over here. So that could make for an interesting winter, as you get these large chunks of Canadian cold high pressure that come down and meeting up with all this warm water, and you can get some pretty good cyclogenesis, or the birth of some pretty strong storms. Extratropical in nature, obviously. They are mid-latitude storms instead of tropical storms, but all that warm water helps to add energy to those storms. So we'll have to watch that and see how this plays out for next year's hurricane season. Not too early to start looking at some of the larger puzzle pieces that may shape next year's season. And one of those is the Pacific Ocean here, the equatorial Pacific, right along the equator here, warming up just a little bit compared to what we saw in 2013's early part of the season and through the middle part of the hurricane season. Now the Pacific Ocean starting to warm, getting on the warm side of neutral for sure. Might even see a very weak El Nino develop out here in the coming months, and that could add more moisture overall to the atmosphere. It's my theory that a very cold Pacific Ocean, like we've seen in the last couple of years relative to averages, sort of helps to dry out the atmosphere like a big dehumidifier, and it kind of throws a monkey wrench into some of the global patterns. And maybe that's one of the reasons why the Atlantic hurricane season has been so fickle in the last couple of years, with very weak systems overall and very few strong systems that were short-lived, because you get a lot of dry air developing over one part of the globe, and that seems like it would affect other parts of the globe. Yet, of course, we just saw with the super typhoon in the western Pacific that sometimes all you need is a period of time, about a month or so, where we saw 5 different very strong typhoons, ending with the most recent super typhoon at Category 5 strength. Sometimes you just need a window of opportunity where everything comes together perfect. So who knows? But this will be one of the large puzzle pieces that we'll be watching in the off-season to see what happens with the Pacific sea surface temperatures, and whether or not they are warmer than normal or colder than normal, or somewhere in between. Looking out across the Atlantic today, getting back on that topic, nothing out there brewing at all. If we take a look at a still shot satellite image of most of the Atlantic basin, I mean, this is exactly what you would expect. Strong upper level winds cutting across here, strong upper level winds out here, very dry, stable air in between. Nothing out there even has a shot at development. The global computer model's not picking up on anything, so it looks like this next 10-day time period will be nice and quiet, just like climatology suggests it should be. All right, well, that's it. Nothing else going on, and at least two in the western Pacific, things are calming down compared to what they have been in recent weeks. Nothing brewing of any substantial significance. There is a depression, weak tropical cyclone headed towards the Philippines that'll dump some rain and sort of rub salt in the wounds out there, but no typhoon development expected in that part of the world anytime soon. And they need as long a break as they can possibly get, because the Philippines are hit by more tropical cyclones than any other land mass. Obviously, the Philippines are made up of several land masses, a lot of islands, but that region is hit by more tropical cyclones, they call them typhoons there, than any other place on Earth. And their season is long, and it can happen any month out of the year, but mostly it's in the latter part of the fall. But they can come up in May, June, July, August, September, but October, November seem to be the peak months out there. So they've got just very little time to really get on the recovery bandwagon and start to get back on their feet. It's going to be a long process. So any quiet that they can get will be much appreciated from Mother Nature, I am sure. Well, have yourselves a great rest of the week ahead. Again, this will be a weekly update until the end of the hurricane season, and then we'll talk to you again next year. Again, I'm Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com and, of course, Hurricane Pro in HD. Thanks for tuning in to today's video discussion. I'll have another one for you a week from today.